in 1961, I remember the spring of 1961, the spring break, and my wife and I and a couple of my kids, we had gone up to Fargo, North Dakota, and my wife's sister and her husband, he was in his third year of electrical engineering. And the spring of the year, you know how messy everything is?
Yep.
And then after World War II, they had built what they called North Court up there, where the soldiers that were coming back and going to college on the GI Bill, and they weren't Quonset huts, Paul. They were silver buildings that with a gable roof, but two people in each, two families in each side. So we were driving through there, and I said to my wife, I said, if there ever was a lower Slumbovia, this is it. and I said, man, how would you like to live in a place like this? And here came the reply that blew me out. She says, I wouldn't mind if it was only for 4 years. Can you imagine? Now, here we are, 1961, 4 kids, no GI Bill, and all the way home, we had it all figured out. We were going to go to college. And I was going to be a civil engineer. Most people says, you're out of your head. You're never going to be able to do it. But we did anyway. We rented this house out during the school year to school teachers that needed a place, and then we'd come back each summer, 1st of June, and then I'd work for Caswell Engineering, who was the city's consulting engineer back in those days. So then in the fall, I'd go back to school again up there. In fact, school started right after Labor Day, and the college didn't start for a couple of weeks afterwards. So my wife would take the kids and get them up into school, and even went over 1 year and registered me for the fall quarter at the university. Talk about fun. And then I'd come up after I'd worked till the last day, you know, because you needed the money, and so I'd ride the Greyhound bus up there. Then she'd pick me up at the depot in Fargo, and here we go again.
Yeah. No interstate back then either.
Yeah. And so anyway, now the people that were not encouraging, I always said this, is that we made it not because of them, but we graduated in spite of them. And I was too proud to fail. And my wife was a hard-working woman, I tell you. I can't begin to tell you what a great person she was to put up with all that. And she says, I said for 4 years, and I meant it. So anyway.
How many children did you have at that point?
We had 4.
And little, younger.
Well, they were in school. They were in elementary school. Mm-hmm. And so.
That's a lot to manage.
Well, one of them, one wasn't with us. One girl, our third child, was born severely handicapped and was under the ward of the state, and so she was back here. But then we had Rob in 1963, right in the middle of college, which was a surprise, but a pleasant surprise the way it ends up here. And so in 65, when I graduated at North Dakota State University with a degree in civil engineering, my parents came up and some other people for the graduation, and wouldn't you know it, the university gave Lawrence Welk an honorary degree in music. Mm-hmm. My dad, who was a Welk fan, he thought more about Welk getting that than he did his own son graduating and so it was kind of fun. And so I immediately, when we came back, in fact, we were loading up the furniture the day of the graduation, and I went to work the next Monday, which was like the 3rd of June or something, of '65, for Caswell Engineering, because I'd worked for them for 3 years and worked with them when they were engineers prior to that. So anyway, then because I was so familiar with the city of Osseo from my experience here, Caswell had me appointed to be the representative from the company at the city council meetings and planning commission meetings in Osseo. And so that's what became then my opportunity to see more development and be the design engineer to make it happen for about 25 years until 1992. And so several things did happen in those years. There was expansion, like I said, into the areas that hadn't had sewer and water. There was growth going there. And then I'd attend all the council meetings and got to know, well, those people that were in the council at that particular time, who happened to be Victoria Joyner was the mayor. Bud Setzler was the clerk administrator. Arnie Fino was on the council. One of the Eitons, Roy Eiton, was on the council. Wes Cole, who was the superintendent of schools, of Osseo schools here, was on the council. Yep. So I learned so much just being there and listening to what took place and how things worked, is that it helped an awful lot. So anyway, as time went on and I became more involved, as I got older and more experienced, then I became more, they depended upon me more so then. Sure. So until 1975, and that was the year that the celebration of the 100 years of I worked for Caswell, but then I left and started my own company, Hakanson Engineering, in my front porch. And so I had clients down there that then I could rely on and have enough people to get started. And then Bud Setzler came one day and he says, we got a program that's through the state that we need an engineer to do a master plan of the planning for the future for the city. And he said, if you take it, you would have to work with the planning commission and put this thing together, which I did. Okay, well, once I was that involved, then all of a sudden, in '77, I joined Carl Anderson, who was a civil engineer, and he had started a business out in Anoka, and we merged. And so the company was called Hakanson Anderson Associates, which still is in existence in Anoka, doing well, serving mostly Anoka County, but they even have an office now down at Prior Lake. So there's everybody there that I don't know, and so, but they always kept the name, because when I left in '89, I said, here's about all I can leave you. I says, is my name. I says, but it's a good name. It was respected, and so they always kept that. And so and here's what one of the couple of things that happened during the reconstruction of Central Avenue. Now, I said before that it was a state highway.
Mhm.
Well, just about that time, Ken, is that they built 169.
Mhm.
And so, so then what happens is that they pass Central Avenue down to the county. Well, needless to say, Paul, is that the county didn't want Central Avenue, but it was made for a highway because from the front of the curb to the curb across the street was 52 feet wide. Very dangerous for pedestrians to go across those intersections there with traffic coming all the time. So they couldn't do anything about it as long as it was a county road either, but then the county road did change their systems, and they gave the Osseo the Central Avenue. And so then Osseo could do something with it. And so we had a construction project back in 1988 where we removed the sidewalks in the center of the street, all out from the front of the building on one side to the front of the building on the other. Completely did it. And it was designed then to be more pedestrian friendly. There were bump outs at the corners that made the ability to have the walking across from 52 feet to, here's where I might miss up on, is that 26 feet or 28. So it was just a shorter distance, which are still, of course, on Central Avenue. But then it also included lighting, and so it was designed that the ideal thing was to make not only Central Avenue the lighting area, but to do the streets First Avenue Northwest, First Avenue East, and make it an envelope so that the whole downtown district was lighted. And so that was an interesting thing and I know later, 20 years later or more, it was redone with new lighting that they had developed, light bulbs and stuff that were so much more efficient and stuff, because to run all those lights, there were three in a cluster, was very expensive for the city. So anyway, they redid it then, and so those ones you see now are very efficient lighting. In fact, I got some across the street here, and so that became one of the projects that we did, and then, of course, before that there were different ones, adding on to the new subdivisions and this and that, and so, but when you build a city street, normally the life of the street is about 30 years. And so then from 59 until 91, in 92, when I was the city engineer, 91, 92, it was decided to redo the whole town again. Okay, now, if I can go back to the 1915 water main installations, and most of the water mains around 6-inch was the only one that was on Central Avenue. The rest were 4-inch water mains. And at that time, there was a high in the wells. We were in the glacial drift which was high in what they called manganese, and had some iron in, and that's a mineral that tends to color the inside of the walls of these pipes.
So it could
And
be
they were
smaller,
clay?
smaller.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
were
yeah.
clay pipes at that point?
No, they were the
They were
ones
metal?
that were in there were cast iron pipes.
Okay.
Okay, in fact, in 91 and 92, we replaced 17,000 feet of water main. But that included a few places that didn't have, an add-on, but mostly it was redoing the ones that were bad.
Wow, what a project.
Okay, now, listen, we cut a piece of 4-inch out, about 6 inches long, so I could put it on the council table and show them. You couldn't get a ping pong ball through it.
That's small.
Wow.
Now,
Holy
Because of
smokes.
so, anyway, ordinarily, if you have a street improvement like the water main, is that the rule is that you assess the property owner adjacent to it, and they become burdened with paying the assessment on it. Well, I didn't see it that way, because 17,000 feet was for all the town. See what I'm saying? So we put the benefit assessment against the whole city, which was the proper way to do it, was the fair way to do it. And so and then of course, at that time, we did other underground improvements as well in order to make that work. Now, as I tell these things, sometimes I might screw up on my dates or years or something here, but forgive me for that. But we had another bad situation, is that the town really didn't have any proper drainage for the streets for rains and so forth. In fact, Broadway Street, when we had a bad rain, the guys would be down there with rowboats because it was like a river. Okay, and you know where it ended up? It ended up going across Podvin's Field,
Yeah.
and then over into Brooklyn Park, and they didn't like it at all.
No.
Okay, so finally, and I don't remember which year it was probably in the 80s. Brooklyn Park needed to expand because they were building over across, over their industrial area there and so forth, and they needed to improve their storm sewer down to Shingle Creek. Well, they approached Osseo and said, we can't accomplish that because your water is still coming over here, and we can't handle that like that. So there was an agreement between the city of Osseo and Brooklyn Park that we installed, in fact, I think it was from the corner by the Lutheran church down there, we installed a 54-inch storm sewer that went, the 169 hadn't been built yet, but we could go all the way over into Brooklyn Park, and they had a holding pond over there. But off that 54-inch, the southeast area of the city that goes over to where Perkins is and the meat market and so forth, we extended laterals over there so we could catch basins in there,
Running.
and we could handle the storm water for the southeast area. And then prior to the 91, 92, well, it might have even been in the 91, 92, but then when the streets were torn up for that, then we extended it all the way up Broadway Street and brought laterals up into as far as the funeral home here and on all those other streets, because the highest point in Osseo, the corner of 3rd and Central Avenue where the bank is.
Okay.
Everything from that point drains this way, and everything north of that goes in what they call the Mississippi watersheds area, which was another thing, because back in the 80s, the state of Minnesota demanded that the cities involved with draining into, that they've been involved in forming watersheds. So Osseo, and I was the representative of the council on the first, the Shingle Creek watershed. But we were also involved in the West Mississippi watershed that included Champlin and Dayton, and so we had we're involved in 2 watersheds. And so that's how that formed, and then of course it's all over the state they had to do that. So we had the ability then to take care of all this water and through the pipes into Brooklyn Park down to Shingle Creek. So that handled that. Then the southwestern area, when the highway built 169 and where the bridges are down there, then they got the water from the southwest area of the city, including Maple Grove, where we put a 54 or 60 inch storm sewer from what we call Jefferson Avenue now, which used to be County Road 18, but it's Jefferson Avenue now. And so we actually served that area in the southwest corner that extends over where all those nice buildings are over there, the office areas. And then Maple Grove needed to hook into that too. So that went into the big railroad ditch and down to Shingle Creek. Okay, now the northeast and northwest area were in trouble, and so Maple Grove, who was developing out there north of County Road 30, they needed to get drainage out of there. So we designed a line from over there by just west of the Osseo Junior High, and it came through that lower subdivision on 30 and up through 30 and then under this County Road, well, whatever this was here at 52 at the time, and into the corner of the St. Vincent's Catholic Church. You know that low area there?
Yeah, the ducks.
Which is Brooklyn Park. Here's where another problem comes. The minute Brooklyn, and then for the outlet, then we put in a large pipe. I think it ended up around the St. Vincent Cemetery and into.
There's that little creek area, back behind the apartments.
Yeah. Or back of the apartments.
Yep.
And we went around the edge of St. Vincent de Paul, and then it would have cut now through the center of it there, but that was all underground. And so even though Brooklyn Park didn't like it, there wasn't a lot of good feelings back in those days between some of these cities,
No.
Really?
But
were they a lot smaller than Osseo at that point?
they had incorporated. Back in the 40s and early 50s, I think they were a township yet.
Yeah.
So was Maple Grove. Osseo could have annexed any part of it if it wanted.
Yeah.
But there were people that were against that, some Central Avenue people that didn't like it. In fact, they were really against 169 going around town. they wanted the traffic to come through town because then they'd
For
pick up
business.
business, you know.
Wasn't Reimer a mayor back when was he a
Dick
mayor?
Reimer was mayor of Maple Grove.
Yeah, cause that was when there was a deal with
Yeah,
Osseo.
yeah. And so, I got to know all of those people back then because my company was doing some work out in that area. That we were doing subdivisions and installing sewers and water and stuff, and so I got to know them. I didn't get to know Brooklyn Park as well. I did a little work, some work there, but it was mostly Maple Grove and then the area in Anoka County. Ramsey was a big client of ours,
Uh-huh.
and did some in Coon Rapids, and so anyway, it was the total suburbs around
You
here.
were
that-
busy with all the suburbs.
Yeah.
around.
Very
that
busy.
was kind of our bread and butter, but we did a lot of subdivisions for private people that we had to design and represent at public hearings and so forth. And the toughest ones were whenever we had to install storm sewers because there was flooding in the lower areas. And so, of course, what happens is that the guy up on the top that is not in danger of flooding, he says, why do I have to pay for this storm sewer?
Exactly.
But it's his water
Right.
that's going down there that we need to take care of. And so they'd always usually have some kind of a spokesman. And we'd go to the public meeting, I'd present the issue,
Also,
and then they'd get the spokesman, and he'd eat me up one side and down the other. You know, but my purpose was not only to represent the city council, my purpose was really to protect them. And so I didn't mind what they called me. I says, I just have to tell you, this has to be done because we have to fix this problem. And so you're contributing to it, and so you're liable to have to do it. Well, they all went through, but you know, it was one of those times when you're not really very popular, you know, but so anyway, that's the way it always is.